So you've talked about how we get into 12-year cycles and how what we've experienced at one point in life, when that 12-year cycle is up, we're going to be going through those themes again. Can you explain a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think the first thing is take it with a grain of salt and just use it as a curiosity tool because it's not a rule, it's just a tendency that we have. So a lot of us think in terms of stages of development in childhood. So we all had a birth, and that means we all also had, you know, approaching 9 months or a little more time in utero, and then some kind of a birth canal experience, and then some kind of early feeding and receiving period, and then crawling around and starting to explore, and then having tantrums and saying no. And so one of the things that I've been thinking about for a long time, and I met a psychiatrist, Peter Sandwell, in the area, who really has taken this idea to its ultimate. He can, in talking with someone, predict when there's something's going to happen. It's really amazing how how developed he's got it. I just introduce it to people so they can be thinking about, oh, that's why I feel this way. So 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 this model goes through, if you think of a clock face, through the first 12 years. And so we'll look at what's going on age 1, age 2, age 3, age 4, all the way up to 12. And then we look at how this shows up again later on. So 13 years old is like 1 year old. 14 years old is like 2 years old. Those of you that have kids, uh, especially ones that during 14, doing what's going on with this kid? Well, he's or she is reliving the 2-year-old autonomy, stage, and it continues on through, so the first 12 years is the original, and then at 24, there you are starting a whole new round again, and then 36, so you can think about your age and think about, where does that leave me? And so it's a tendency, and the tendency means when you're dreaming, you might be pulling up memories from these experiences of an earlier age. And it's not necessarily just the first go round. Everything that happened in the second go round, is also tending to come up. And all the previous cycles around the clock will tend to be highlighted in your awareness. And in stage one, I talk a lot about stage 1, 2, and 3 because these are the pre-verbal stages. After we have language, memory is more formed, and we can remember, oh yeah, when I went to school, first grade, I remember that, and this is how I felt. But the stages for the issues for stage 1 really are things like, am I safe? The baby has to feel really held securely and warmly and lovingly to feel safe. Is there enough time, love, money? All the supply issues that we have go back to that stage. Freud called it the oral stage. So all the things that have to do with smoking, drinking, talking too much, all those things that are oral have their origin in this stage. And then we start crawling around, exploring the world. And in some houses, we're kind of put in a little prison called a playpen. And we learn that the world is confining. Some houses, they childproof the house. So all the, things are put up so that they can't be, either they can't be damaged or we can't be damaged when we run into them. The electrical outlets are covered and so forth. And so that kid will crawl around, explore the world, taste things, play with things. And then we hit the 18 months to 3-year period where anger is awakened in the body, and the sense of me do it. I want to do it myself. And sometimes parents have, don't have the time to allow the child to tie their shoe before, getting on the bus, for instance, or whatever had to happen. Um, and so there's a lot of energy that can get fixated in those stages, and they become what we call an ego state that has its own kind of personhood and can show up and get activated by life. So if you're beginning something new, a new job, a new adventure, moving to a new place, just going to somewhere you've never been before, that also tends to highlight stage one. Like, do I have a right to be here? Like I've counseled at a university a lot, and the freshmen will come in, and the ones that find their way to the counselor usually have issues about am I good enough, and do I belong here, that sort of thing. And so this model can help them understand that yes, they belong here because they chose to be here, and this is what it's for. And so to bring their psychology up to date, I give them some things to do to really start feeling at home wherever they are, feeling safe wherever they are. So I originally got this model, a similar model from Pam Levin, Levin, who at the time was living out in Ukiah, California with a group of people, and they were off the grid and living with the cycles of the sun. And she just started thinking about cycles. So she wrote a book called Cycles of Power. And the idea is as we go around the circle, I envision this. I don't know if she did or not. So we spiral around. Each time we go through these developmental stages, we can empower ourselves. The first one is, do I have a right to be here? So when you go around again, it's like, yes, I have a right. And then you claim that right in subsequent times around. Because the idea that the perfect parents haven't been invented, and we all come through our childhood with some limitations that then become self-imposed and can be updated. So
So do you have any tips for when, if first it sounds like we need to gain awareness that we're on the cycle, but then once we are, how can we empower ourselves to move forward?
Well, one of the things I notice that I just do intuitively when I'm talking with a person and they're describing something that's an issue in their lives is I think about, where does that issue come from developmentally? I always like to get a sense of, I think of people as having that little boy or little girl, inside, still trying to make sense out of things. And so I'll create a context. And then what I'll do is I'll teach this model just so that they can start thinking about how we recycle through these stages as we grow up. And then I'll think about, well, what does a kid really need at that stage? And I have 4 children. I love being a parent, and I love all my kids, and I think they're all awesome adults. So I think about, what I was able to provide and my wife, and also what we missed, where we had some blind spots, and let them know that we were aware of this as a potential blind spot. So one of the things I think about is that I worked for 25 years or so in a university where I was working with a lot of the freshmen coming in. And whenever we begin a new experience, that tends to put us through starting around the clock again. So a new experience like going to college is going to bring up the stage 1 issues is, do I feel safe? Do I feel wanted? Do I feel like I belong? Is there enough here? Enough time? And is there enough money to pay for this? And is there enough food? And, the things that are needed for survival. And I'll just point out that these were issues from the early life. And I'll then ask them, what do you know about your birth or your early life or tell me about your family. So I get a sense of what some of the themes might be. And then we design corrective experiences where they can really empower themselves to really claim, yes, I have a right to be here. We all have a right to be here on this planet. Everyone, if you're here, you have a right to be here. So I like to make proclamations like that.
I can see where that would be really helpful.
Yeah. And then, you know, it happens in relationships where, you know, if the people are relatively close in age, then they'll be going through these stages at the same time. But if there's a discrepancy in age, you know, one of them might hit the stage and the other one's going, whoa, why are you all of a sudden feeling that way? You know, and it helps put some more understanding on why we're experiencing what we're experiencing.
So even when they enter college, those early themes may be coming in, but it doesn't mean they're resetting the clock and adjusting their years. They're still on that same schedule. It's just these
That's
things
right.
are now
Yeah.
adding in. Well, it sounds like there's
Yeah.
definitely a lot more to learn about that.
Yeah. I mean, it's a useful model, but, you know, I have like a handful of models that I love. I love simple models because people are very complex, and simple models help us negotiate and create maps of what needs to happen. And so I like to teach the models, give people the tools that they can use. And then, you know, the people that really, you know, get value from it will come back with questions and awarenesses and answers. And, you know, it really is a useful tool.
I think everything we can add to our toolbox makes life that much better. All the awareness we can gain, and so glad that you're doing the work you do and teaching all of us how to empower ourselves.
Excellent. Well, thank you for having me. And I'm happy to provide that.
And thank you for sharing all this knowledge.